One. Good afternoon. Welcome to Busboys and Poets Books Presents. Today we have a very special book club meeting that we're live streaming to you all. And joining us is Amanda DeWitt and Andrew Joseph. And damn it, Andrew, I can't see the last bit of your name.
White, like the color. Just look at me and you'll get it. All right.
And folks who are joining us from home, if you have any questions, comments as we go along with the program, go ahead and put it into the comment box, and I will be your voice for the evening. I hope it does not suck. Trying my best here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our book club leader.
Hey everybody, I'm Dee. I use they them pronouns.
Hey, I'm Nathan. I use they them pronouns as well. We are leading the book club today. We have a queer book club here at Busboys and Poets Takoma that is once a month-ish. This month we read 2 YA books, Ace is Wild and Hell Followed With Us. So we're going to be talking to the authors of both of these books, and we really appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
And then we should have asked participants if you guys want to introduce yourself or remain mysterious and anonymous.
I'm mysterious. I'll remain mysterious. But I'm the cast.
Love that for both of you.
So let's start out with a nice easy question. What are some works, books, movies, TV shows, or songs that influenced your books or writing while you were working on them?
I have a whole list. A lot of them I didn't actually start watching or reading or listening to until the book was, about, in edits or something along those lines. Largely because I wrote Hell Followed With Us because I was annoyed by kind of the post-apocalyptic media that I could get a hold of growing up. But I grew up on Fallout. I grew up on Metro and Stalker and all of those video games. The Last of Us, that sort of thing. And I loved those more than I actually liked the post-apocalyptic books that I read, because it was all white doomsday prepper guys being like, oh, the end of the world is my time to shine. And I'm like, stop it. So I ended up taking a lot of inspiration from Dead Space. And around the time that, I was editing, there was Annihilation and The Girl with All the Gifts and Far Cry 5. And for those of you who like my book, I will always recommend the Bring Me the Horizon album, Post-Human Survival Horror. It is one of my favorite albums, and it goes with the book very well.
Yeah, I guess mine would probably be I don't know, they're kind of obvious, Ocean, the Ocean's movies, of course, with the heist and the Vegas. And one thing that I kind of thought, it didn't actually come out because this is more poker than magic, but I always liked the kind of slick vibes of Now You See Me. Originally the book wasn't, for a minute it wasn't about magic, but that didn't work. But I also like to say, kind of similar to Andrew, I didn't watch it at the time, but retroactively, I love Succession. I was like, it's a really good thing I got into Succession after, edits, or else I would have been like, forget that other stuff. We're talking about, it's all about the family now. And our editor would have been like, don't do that. That's my dog.
That's actually funny. I haven't watched Succession, but from the gifs I have seen, there are definitely some parallels to the whole very complex family legacy dynamics.
Yeah, dysfunctional rich people.
Yeah, that too. Rich people who do crimes and then things like that. One thing I was going to say is that, so one question, one of the things we mentioned in the lead up is even though these books are really dissimilar in terms of tone and genre, they have some really similar themes, which is somewhat surprising. One of them is that your main characters face little to no support from adults, as well as expectations and in some cases huge like family legacies placed on them for where their lives should be going. And they, do you think that that's a common situation for queer youth in particular?
I do think it's, yeah, like you said, when we first heard about this event, I was like, these are such funny books to put together. But yeah, it's interesting. I never thought about like the similarities because I was like, one is comedy and one is gore. Like these are so different. But yeah, I think that is a really interesting point. Like how, like obviously in both our books, those expectations are like exaggerated because they're like genre. But yeah, I think it is kind of like an interesting parallel to like queer youth and kind of coming into that and being like, I'm not what mom and dad expected, but that's okay. And
Yeah, a huge part of Hell Followed With Us is, Benji is seen throughout like pretty much every character in the book as like not just like the child of an evangelical cult leader, but like the daughter of an evangelical cult leader, which is there's a lot of baggage attached to that believe it or not, Benji is not a fan of. Shocker, I know. And so much of the book is not just it's okay for me to not be who my family thought I was going to be, but undoing the damage left by the forcing of who that person was going to be. And I definitely feel like that's something that a lot of not just queer youth can like understand, but that kind of thing like follows you for a long time. And even the adults that have read the book that have been like, yeah, it sucks and it hurts and I get it. Um, it was very fun to write, like bucking that expectation though. It was kind of like, hey, not only am I not like the perfect daughter messiah that you thought I was gonna be, not only am I a boy, I'm gonna murder all of you, which was fun.
yeah, it's interesting with Aces Wild. I think it's a little different. Obviously, it's a lot different, but in that vein, in that like Jack, he wanted to be that person, and it doesn't have to do with his identity. It's just like who he wanted to be, like the successor, for his mom and stuff. And it's him having to learn like maybe I don't have to be like maybe who I am isn't reliant on my family legacy.
Last month, we just read The 12 Swans. Is that the one? I'm just making a connection with like a daughter coming back into her family. But just last month, I forget the name of the collection.
He read The Merry Spinster by Daniel Lavery.
The Merry Spinster. And it just reminded me when you said that if we read The 12 Swans, where she comes back with her brother and kind of builds the family. So there's some like connections between what we just read, but also like fairy tales as well. So it is just an interesting connection for me.
Yeah, there are definitely some elements of fairy tale-esque. There are definitely some fairy tale-esque elements, I think, in both books. Aces Wild alludes to it very deliberately with the Arthurian legend. But you can also definitely see it in Hell Followed With Us because, post-apocalyptic, especially religious post-apocalyptic, is inherently like there is a bit of a larger than life mythological fairy tale element to that.
We also talked a bit about their families in that last question, and I found it very interesting how both books had very trying to be a part of the main character's family and going about it in a really bad way. What led you to choose? What led you to choose these villains for your works?
So was the question like why we decided to go with an antagonist that's like really trying to be a part of the main character's life, like family? I had a hard time hearing it. I'm sorry.
Sorry, let me. Yeah, so I was just remarking on the fact that both of these villains are people who are ultimately Theo and God, what is
Peter.
Peter, yeah, let's go with Peter. Are both trying to become a part of the main character's family and going about it in very misguided ways. And I was wondering what led you to choose these villains and explore them in this way. Also, Benji's mom, yeah, she's already a part of Benji's family. She's just doing it really badly.
Well, one of the things that stands out about that is the fact that when a lot of times when bad things happen because of something that a person does, it's very rarely because of a stranger. It is very, very often someone that because who else would be in your life that much to mess with it? And that was definitely my experience growing up. And I feel like it's something that's kind of, lots of like teens also experience that sort of thing. It's not going to be, some random guy from another school that's bullying you. It's the guy that's, in your math class that sits behind you every day. So it is the people that you are closest to that can do the most harm. And especially when it comes to family, that like really sucks. And there's always this expectation that, they're family, you have to forgive them. No, you don't. And so like providing that sort of thing in a YA novel is, for me always really important. Be like, hey, this is something that maybe you're dealing with or you will have to deal with in the future. And I'm just letting you know that it's okay. And you don't have to extend forgiveness to someone just because they say they love you. Especially in the case of Benji's mom, who is the worst.
The worst apocalyptic levels.
Oh yeah. Oh, she's so bad. Why?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer. My answer is I love a secret family plot twist. It's a problem. I look at my manuscripts like pre-publication and stuff, and I'm like, oh, like half of these have that. That's interesting. That says a lot about me. Yeah, I just think it's juicy. I guess that's what I went for. But also, I guess it is juicy because it is like so personal and kind of tying into like the idea that like the societal idea that your family is supposed to be held on this different level. And it's like, no, just because we're related doesn't mean it changes anything. Like, especially in these twists where it's like, we've been related the whole time. It's like, yeah, but you're still a dick. Like,
I totally understand the rule of cool, though. I do stuff
It's what I
because
live
it
by.
sounds awesome all the time.
It is interesting. I'm just realizing that this now, the parallel of there being a primary villain who's the parent of our hero, who is just evil and bad and doesn't have any redeeming factors, and there being a secondary villain who is someone who's close in age to our hero, and in the case of Aces Wild, actually does redeem herself, or at least isn't divorced and ends up in a happy relationship, and in the case of Help Follow With Us, somewhat less so.
Yeah, when you mentioned Theo, I was like, oh, yeah, Theo and Morgan.
Yeah, there's a little bit of an interesting parallel there.
Yeah.
And secondary villain, and I also see that with the one as an adult, and therefore presumably has more more agency over what they're doing, and isn't being like, even if they're being manipulated into it, they're an adult with full control over their faculties, while the other one is teenager who is being manipulated by the adult figure and who is being, even if they have some amount of agency, they aren't held as, I think, responsible by the narrative for what they're doing. He gets held, Theo definitely does get held responsible, but I think this actually is going to lead to one of the questions for Help Followed with us. You show us Theo's perspective to give us, I think, I assume, some amount of sympathy for him.
Oh, sorry, my headphones are so bad. Was that about like Theo's POV?
Yeah, so Megan framed that as a statement, so I'm just going to reframe that as a question.
Yeah.
Some of the parts of the book were told from Theo's perspective or Nick's point of view. And why did you choose to write those scenes from those particular perspectives?
Yeah, so funnily enough, when I started like the first draft of Hell Followed with us, there were a bunch of chapters from a bunch of different points of view. Like a solid third was from Nick, from Benji, from Sister Kipling, from Benji's mom, from a bunch of other characters. And like even some nameless, characters that don't actually show up in the final. And it took my agent being like, hey, you're not Tom Clancy. You're not writing a military thriller. You don't have to track every single piece on the board. Just give us the points of view that give us things we need to know. And you should be good there. So obviously we have Nick's point of view because otherwise, without that, the sort of situation with wanting to give Benji over to the Vanguard would it would never really show up on page except for when Nick decides not to do it. And with Theo, I just wanted to get into Theo's pathetic little head. He's disgusting. I can't stand. He's a child, I know. Is it mean for me to say that? Maybe. Sad little boy who I do not like.
We all have a child we don't like. It's okay.
Exactly. But honestly, it was really fun to write Nick's point of view, especially because it was my first time writing an autistic character. Those were the chapters that helped me figure out that I am too, because I was doing research to write it and was like, you mean everybody's not like this? You mean this isn't the norm? Okay, well that's good to know. All right, gonna have to do some research there. But I try to not, like overload with other POVs now. It's very much just what does the story need, right? Like what information needs to be given that the story will fall apart without, and then try to make me pulling that off sound cool.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Andrew. Hi, I have a question for Andrew. First of all, I love the way you spoke about the trans body, the physical quality of a trans body in that transitioning period. And I thought it was really interesting how you overlapped it with body horror. And I'm curious, like, where did that connection come about? Were there bits of media that you that inspired this sort of the combination? I'm really fascinated with that idea, so I was really a fan of the book. So yeah, curious where that all came from.
Yeah. So my running joke in my life is that I've never really connected with people the way that I think that I should. And that was a combination of, gender dysphoria and unrecognized autism. It's a combination as a child. Yay. That's always fun. And so like gender dysphoria always really meant that it was difficult for me to connect with myself, and the autism made it difficult to connect with other people. And where else do you get something that is the same, like both of those things together, if not for monsters, right? I remember playing Dead Space and being way more into the necromorphs, like the giant horrific corpse monsters, than I ever was with the hero of the story. And, growing up, that was definitely like a recurring theme in my life. I always connected more to monsters than I ever did to like people. And by the time that I figured out why that was the case, it had kind of like the neural pathways had carved itself into my brain, and it's kind of impossible for me to remove transness and monstrosity from each other in a way that I genuinely really love and is really important to me. And also body horror is fun because I'm a little freak who loves to be grossed out. So when it came time to actually write this book, I was like, if I don't write about a trans kid turning into a monster, I'm lying about my own experience. And also, I want to be friends with corpse monsters. So I want to be friends with the Grace so bad.
I did not want to until like halfway through, and I was like, oh, I guess I do. I guess I do want to be friends with it.
They're not little dudes.
They're
They're
just
big,
guys.
but
so one of the questions I had was about the body horror aspect of this, so, and you've answered most of that. So I'm going to say instead, did you face any kind of, pushback for having that much gore and body horror in a YA book? That's not something I've ever seen, I think, in having, like, it's unusual to see that amount of body horror, period, but especially in a book that is ostensibly for kids.
it's always fun describing what my books are about and going, by the way, I'm a children's author. But honestly, I have gotten little to no pushback, if any, about the gore and the body horror in this book. When I presented the book to my agent, he was like, yeah, this is how it's supposed to go. When it got bought by Ashley, she was just kind of like, yeah, that's like, this was never in question. The gore, the body horror was never in question, ever. Like, I think a lot of it has to do with our editor because I turned in a draft of something and she's like, I want this to be worse. And I was like,
I was just thinking.
absolutely.
I was like, the thing about Ashley is that she wants to push the envelope.
Exactly. So, like, as far as I'm aware, like, I have been informed by some of my friends that some 1-star reviews of the book are like, too gross, couldn't finish. Like, that's fine. The book wasn't for you, I guess. But like from teachers, from educators, from reviewers, that sort of thing, like trade reviewers, the fact that the book is super gross was never an issue. So I am still waiting for the shoe to drop. Just about something. I don't know what, but something's gonna come up eventually, especially in this day and age. Considering what the book is about in general, because it's me taking, like crack shots at evangelical Christianity for 400 pages, so aka 25% of the US population, the fact that it has not been banned anywhere, I'm like, okay, what's happening?
I gotta say, I don't see that part of the population picking up the book in the first place. So,
Yeah, but you'd think you'd hear about it.
I feel like it may be one of those things where it slides under the radar.
God, I hope so.
They're like, this cover's too cool. This isn't going to be something we want to read.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the reason books like that get banned is usually because their kids start reading it, and then they have to pay attention.
Yeah, maybe their kids haven't started reading it. Or sensible enough to hide it from their parents.
There are a lot of great ways to hide books from parents.
Advocate for it. Do either of you have any other questions about How Follow With Us specifically? Yeah.
You're like, I have all of them.
This isn't a question, but rather a suggestion for further content. I don't know if you've heard of this documentary, Queer for Fear, but it talks a lot about the queerness in specifically horror cinema. So definitely check that out. It's on Shudder. It talks about the queer undercurrents and overcurrents of horror characters and monster characters and the queerness of the monster. So definitely recommend that as a combination for this one.
That sounds very good.
I guess I have a question just about it's not just about How It Followed With Us, but the genre in general. I guess I'm from a slightly older generation. I don't remember young adult. Like I went from Judy Blume, Stephen James. So,
Good
what,
transition.
yeah. What is, like, how do you see, like, you mentioned your editor, so what is young adult, and do you both see yourself as young adult authors, or is it just that the stories that you wrote happen to flow into that?
I just want to make sure that I got that again. My speakers are so bad. Is it about why it was young adult or how it turned young adult, that sort of thing?
It was, how do you see young adult as a genre, and do you see yourselves as young adult authors, or just as authors who wrote stories that flowed into that?
Yeah, so I like when I sit down to write a book, it is like in my head, it is usually young adult first. And then I have to pick at it and see if it is actually a young adult book or if I need to move it up to adult. Um, like I do generally see myself as like a young adult author first. Specifically because, you know, for me growing up, I say growing up as if I'm not 24 and still in the process. So, but you know, even back in 2014, 2015, 2016, when I was like starting to figure things out, there was nothing. There was maybe If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo. I read the first book, my first book with a trans mask main character, in I think 2020, a few months after I had come out myself. I had nothing at all growing up. Believe it, I was incredibly obsessed with girls dressing up as boys to survive. If you could believe it, I was super into those. God knows why. um, and there was always just such a lack of young adult stories with trans characters in them that that's always my go-to. When I come up with a story, it always starts as that because I'm always trying to give back to kids. And, you know, if I look at a story and go, that should really be adult, I will take it, age it up, and move it. I've done that once, and fingers crossed that it sells because I really like it. But yeah, I do consider myself like a YA author first that dabbled in adult. If the story I'm trying to tell is more in that vein.
Yeah, I think for me, young adult is a lot more like, I also kind of consider myself like a young adult author first. That's what I've done so far. But it's very much like, I guess, the themes of like identity and like finding out who I am and who I want to be, which like I think are things that we grapple with over our whole lives, which is like kind of why, you know, you can enjoy YA so much as an adult. But I think those are really important in YA. That's kind of something I have to keep in mind when I'm writing YA. And like right now, I'm taking a YA fantasy I had and making it into adult. And it's just interesting, kind of how much your brain changes gears. It's like, oh, like no, it's different in a way that's kind of hard to quantify. You just feel it. So much of writing is like I just feel it. But yeah, I think when I'm definitely kind of prioritize YA and yeah, like kind of like Andrew was saying, like be able to kind of give these stories that we didn't have growing up, and you know, kind of expand that canon for, you know, people who are growing up now.
It is always really fun when you're working on an adult story and you write something and go, oh, I can't say that, and go, wait, I'm writing an adult book. I can say that, and in fact, I will make it worse.
That's me with making protagonists just like more morally gray, because I feel like in YA you can get away with a lot of stuff now, but there's sometimes pushback. Like I've seen a couple of stuff where people are like, I don't know, Jack lies a lot, and it's like, well, get over it, people lie. But
yeah, seriously.
Be an adult, I'm just like, this person's not very good at all.
I'm sorry, have those people met teenagers?
What was that?
So I'm sorry, have those people met teenagers?
I know, right?
Yeah,
I love to lie. We all love to lie.
There's also the fact that he's a card player. That's what they do.
Yeah, it's all about bluffing.
Playing cards. That is fundamentally part of the basis
Also a necessary part of getting to the heist story. Any other
Okay, so transitioning to Aces Wild. One question I have is, Jack's family is really unconventional. He doesn't live with his family. He doesn't have he lives in a hotel. His family lives in a hotel. He doesn't have close connections with either of his parents really, where he relies on them, or his sisters. And, do you think that made his connection with his ace friends deeper or more intense than it would have been otherwise, or do you think that they would have been that connected and that kind of bonded no matter what?
So I think, one of the themes of the book that is important to me is friendship and internet friendship, because my best friends, we met online and definitely kind of modeled that relationship after what I have, and so I think they still would have been as close, but I think it's definitely in his character arc that he's learning from his so he grew up with this dysfunctional family, and he kind of couldn't rely on anyone in a way he doesn't totally consciously realize, and so in the book his friends are having to teach him we're here for you, you can rely on us, you can trust us, and he's having to learn that oh yeah, it's not just me, I can be vulnerable, I can rely on people to help me just because they love me, that he didn't have before.
Yeah, that really got me, because someone like my best friend, who I consider a brother, I met on Twitter, and that was nice. Anything that validates online friendships, because oh god, the amount of pushback I got for having online friends as a teenager.
Yeah. Well, I definitely got the don't tell anyone your name, they're gonna murder you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, this was I'm like, it's a love letter to my internet friends, basically.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of Jack's family, and Jack's kind of very different connection from his family and his internet friends, he actually never ended up coming out to his family, or anyone during the book. His friends know at the beginning. Was this a deliberate choice? Do you think Jack's asexuality is relevant to the family, or the expectations and legacy put on him? And why did you decide to write the book that way?
Yeah, this is actually, I had a book club earlier in the week, an Arrow Ace book club, and we had an interesting discussion about that, because it was a conscious choice, where when I started the book, I was like, yeah, I want this to be, have, asexuality be a big part of it, but I don't want it to be about it. And, I don't want it to be a problem. So, that, I kind of, that's why I had 5 of them. So it's and they're all ace, so they're all, I mean, they do have some little arguments about stuff, but they all know that about each other and accept that, more or less. And yeah, and there are a couple points where Jack kind of dodges it, where it almost comes up with his family, and he's like, oh, because yeah, I guess I just wasn't interested in a coming out story, and it didn't feel relevant to his journey or what was going on. And also, I guess just for me personally, I'm I technically have never come out as ace to anyone. Well, it's my friends, but I talked about it. But yeah, my whole family never told, straight up told them. I just published a whole book about it instead. So I just from my perspective as an ace person, I'm I'm just not interested in coming out. So I didn't think he was either. He was I don't want to talk about that with my sisters. It just wasn't comfortable for him, and he wasn't going to get anything out of it. So we don't need that.
So this is, I suppose, a transition of Matt Andrew's book book, but in a similar vein, the Hellfire with Us also isn't really a coming out story, but rather, I suppose, like the fallout or the aftermath of coming out. Was that on your mind as well, like not wanting to necessarily tell a coming out story, but rather how we like grow and change and evolve from there, from the sort of figuring out oneself?
Yeah, like definitely in like the vein of like Amanda's book, like neither of these are coming out books, you know? And I think, you know, there's always going to be room for more coming out books, especially with different identities and different kinds of people and everything. But I definitely get the sense that like both of them are just like it's a defining piece of who the character is, but it's not like, and it is kind of like a point of the story, but it is not the story, you know? Um, and, you know, I personally find those a little more interesting, so I am very glad that that was the route that you took. I did think that was really good. So just like coming out like isn't the end of it. Figuring out what you are is not the end of, you know, your journey of being queer of any kind. You still have to exist after, you know, you tell people or you don't tell people. So, you know, I like that our books are in conversation in some ways that is genuinely very funny. It's kind of like,
You would not have expected. I did not expect. But like I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago in another like event. And that like you said, like there's room for all kinds of explorations of queerness, like we need all of it. But I think Aces Wild and Hell Fell With Us are kind of on the same page in that like I wrote Aces Wild not for people who were discovering their asexuality, but the people who were already there and kind of needed like for that validation. And I feel like Hell Fell With Us is kind of the same, where it's like this is for people who are already trans or know they're trans and kind of like get to, I don't know, have fun, like
be loud about it.
Yeah. So it was us indulging that.
One question I have is about the framing device you used in Aces Wild, where Jack's telling the story as a confession, where he's telling someone the story, or he's admitting at certain points that he's an unreliable narrator and all of those, which was deeply fun. And I was just wondering, like, what did that framing device do for you? Like, how do you think that added to the book, the style?
So that's something I did to myself, not 100% intentionally. In that also, normally I write in first person present tense, big present tense fan. But I wrote that first line that it was a confession and like had that little like prologue thing, and I was like, now I gotta write it all in past tense. That's a burden I gave myself. But I do like it. That's why I didn't change it, even though it would have been easier. And that I think it really helped facilitate his voice. Because I think that's like kind of the most important part of him and in the book is that quirky, like comedic, kind of smarmy voice. And yeah, I got to play with that a little bit. Like, yeah, he's a liar. He's not being totally honest. He tells you at the beginning.
I mean, personally, I really like that because it is a heist, and in pretty much all heist movies, I don't think I've read a heist book explicitly before, but in pretty much all heist movies, the camera is lying to you, and they're concealing parts from you that they go back and tell you later, and like it is an unreliable narrator.
Yeah, I think that is something. Well, like you said, like in film, like you can have that sort of like, oh, actually, we didn't tell you this part, and here's how it all comes together, and how that is so important for heist. So yeah, it definitely helps me kind of be able to do that.
So we have a question from the audience online. Nina B would like to know more about your creative processes. Do you plot things out and organize? Do you have playlists? Do you commission art of your characters, etc.?
I know that at this point, what happened between like building Hell Followed With Us and what I'm currently doing to write The Spirit Bears Its Teeth is way different because I had, you know, 4 years between starting to write Hell Followed With Us and it hitting shelves. And with The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, I have maybe half that, if you know, if as much. Are you in the same boat with Ren Martin?
I cheated in that I actually wrote Red Martin while I was on sub with Aces Wild. So
lucky.
yeah,
Yeah,
so when
I
it still
had
was my option, it was like, okay, you've got like until June or July to submit this. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll just sit on it for a month.
because like I came up with the proposal for The Spirit Bears Its Teeth in November, but didn't start writing it until it sold in February. So I had from February to August, and then I got an extension until September. Um, so what I ended up doing, I think, for Hell Followed With Us was I was just leisurely drafting over and over while I was in school because I was an undergrad at the time. And I would just write something and be like, oh, you know, maybe I'll come back to it a little bit later, you know, all this.
La-di-da.
And yeah, the book like was made very organically and everything came together very slowly over the period of several years. The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, I had to reverse engineer it to do it on a very deadline. And I am halfway through with developmental edits, and I have until December 8th to finish them, and I'm dying, Squirtle. It's really hard.
Yeah,
it's
that
really,
was me last month.
it's really difficult. And honestly, so much of it now because I'm writing full time until I get a full time job, hopefully, fingers crossed. Is that I keep this little journal. This is my second one of these, where I write down how much I write a day, what my time is, and everything that I did. I am on day, I think, 120 of tracking. And this is the only thing that like I think reminds me that I have been like working pretty much every day for the past 120 days. It's really it's really easy to forget how much work that you do until you start keeping track of it. You look back and go, I did that, which is so right now my process is streaming endlessly because I'm on deadline and still have 35,000 more words to write before December 8th.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's stressing me out.
Yeah.
I am chaotic, which scares me because I am afraid. I cheated with my second book. I had it done before, like 100% drafted before it sold. So I'm afraid of the future because yeah, I'm straight up. I have no outlines. Like I said, I started Aces Wild with that first line about being a confession, and I was like, okay, here we go. I guess this is what locked and loaded. Yeah, I just make it up as I go along, and then you know when we edit, that's when it was interesting actually with Ren Martin, my second book. Yeah, I had it fully drafted, but I just did the first round of developmental edits, and it made it very clear to me how much like I laid the groundwork in the first draft, and then in editing, that's when I kind of like am able to see the themes and bring them out and kind of like construct them. I definitely, yeah, I'm a discovery writer for sure. That's why I'm really afraid of having a real deadline. I'm gonna, my secret plan is to write my third book, which hopefully my third book before, like as soon as possible, probably like right now, so I have it ready. Like,
I should do that.
It's all about cheating.
Man.
But yeah, playlists, I don't listen to music when I write. I have to, because then I'm like listening to the words and I'm just thinking about the words. But I still do playlists a little bit just like for fun, like kind of get in the mood. And I don't commission character art because I'm a huge cheapskate. Sometimes I think about it, but like I'm a hobby artist, so I'm like, oh, I'll just do it myself. It's kind of like the like, oh, we have food at home.
Yeah, I'm definitely if I don't have Spotify going, you know, in the background while I'm working, I like lose my mind. I have to
We're the
have noise.
opposite.
I have to have noise, you know. It's starting to get dark in here. Oh no. Oh, my blind just closed. Let's not do that. I'm renting the space. I don't want to have to get back deposit on the blinds. But you know what? Let's try this. I'm definitely I'm definitely a playlist kind of guy. I mentioned Bring Me the Horizon. I'm currently listening to a lot of Mice and Men. Like heavy metal, like Architects, that sort of thing. And for character art, I have some on my walls, like right behind me. Some of which I've commissioned, some of which has just simply been given to me by readers. But I really like commissioning art. I think it's really cool. I get like a huge kick out of it. I'm an artist myself, and I very often do really enjoy. But like, I'm not like a fiber crafter. Well, this was a
He's so
present.
cute.
Yeah, this was a present. This is my boy Benji. So I can draw, but I can't make plushies.
So we alluded to the fact that y'all folks are strange companions. Do each of you have a book that would make a really interesting pairing with your books?
That's a hard one. It's like, look at my bookshelf.
Really what we're asking you is tell us what to read next.
Yeah.
Ooh. We'll read our second books next fall.
Obviously, yeah.
Would you say that's strange?
I think for me, The Project by Courtney Summers is my go-to. Because I've kind of like joked around with my friends that The Project by Courtney Summers is a story of what the angels were like before the end of the world. It's a really terrifying cult book. And I absolutely love it. I'm also I got an arc of Wolfpack, which is also about cults. So just like any cult book, it's also in verse, so it should be a really quick read. It comes out in 6 or 7 months.
Some amount of time.
Yeah.
I'll plug my friend Emma Olin's book Funeral Girl as kind of like this one's is also a little unlikely pairing in that it's like about like death anxiety and ghosts, but it also has a ace protagonist. And we were actually talking a couple weeks ago about like they're different books. Like this one is more like like they said the grief and like death anxiety, and mine's like goofy stuff. But just like the themes of like finding yourself and like coming to terms with things and like accepting help from people and taking ownership. It's another book that I think has interest. Like you wouldn't expect them to be next to each other, but once you read them, you're like, oh, okay, yeah.
So I have a question. What books would you say helped inspire or really kind of give direction to your writing? I'm really curious to see if there's like any like body horror in particular for you, Andrew, or like any books that really help inform like how to write about the ACE experience, because not everyone's ACE experience is the same experience, so on and so forth.
I think like the standouts for me with How Followed With Us are Surrender Your Sons by Adam Sass and Wilder Girls by Rory Power. Yeah, those are definitely like standouts for me. I don't know if I didn't read Wilder Girls until I was actually like working on the book. But I did realize that I wanted the two to be in conversation. And Surrender Your Sons is also just like really good in that sense of someone else is trying to force you to be something that you do not want to be. And sometimes you can't love and friendship your way out of a terrible situation, and you need to beat some ass.
Put that on a poster.
Yeah, seriously.
I just need pizza. I'm always so basic with this answer. Like, yeah, it's 6 of Crows because of the heist, and like both my agent, my editor were like, "Oh my God, Jack, he's like, you know, modern Kes Brecker and with the poker and stuff like that." But everyone already loves 6 of Crows because it's good, it's so good. But I don't know if I really read a lot of Ace books beforehand, or even necessarily after, because I'm really bad at reading sometimes. Sometimes the brain don't work. But like there are a lot of good ones out there. It's just, you know.
I work in a
Yeah.
bookstore and I like to joke that I can't read, so relatable.
What was that?
I work in a bookstore and I like to say I cannot read sometimes. Relatable.
That's I'm a librarian and an author, and I'm like, yeah, I haven't. I'm being good right now, but all summer I was like, I haven't read anything.
I'll ask a question. Is it on?
I have a much more general question. We are in Washington DC and we love to talk about politics. I think both of you, I believe both of you, live in states that do not seem too queer friendly. Does that affect your writing at all, or being able to publish or anything along those lines? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Florida, which is known for sucking, especially lately. I don't think it's really affected my process so much. Luckily, my county isn't the worst of them. I mean, it's getting more red, but it's not too bad. But I also consider myself kind of lucky in that asexuality is a little more under the radar. Like, I'm sure plenty of people are nasty about it, but it's not quite what they're going after, so I don't think they really notice it as much. So I consider myself lucky there. But yeah, it does suck, especially being a librarian in Florida, kind of seeing, you know, my library has been good so far, but hearing about other counties and, you know, other systems starting to, I heard about a county just recently who banned pride displays, and it's like watching it get worse right before your eyes, which I know we're kind of seeing on a national level, but especially, yeah, being in such a red state, it's like, oh wow, we're in it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. You know, me like being, you know, like bi, I'm bi, I'm gay, like the fact that I'm marrying a woman besides I like men. And being trans, you know, it hasn't really like done a number on me yet, especially like not where I am. I will say that I am from Virginia. My family's from West Virginia. And Virginia isn't doing too hot right now, especially with our new governor, who I shouldn't say anything about because I'm on a live stream. What's that Twitter meme about? Like, it's the just kidding star. This is a star for the feds. So everything I say, I'm just kidding. But it's definitely been really weird, especially because I'm right next to a county that is turning very red very fast and is getting very scary very fast. If you know anything about Loudoun County, Virginia, it's been a problem recently. It's been really bad. And so it's definitely, I'm keeping an eye on things. It feels like, I feel like we kind of have to. It's gotten to the point where I have to name search my book every day just to make sure that nothing bad is going on. Right? Like, I just skim through the Google results just to make sure that everything's fine. And it has been so far, but I'm just like, it's like you. I'm just kind of hoping and like waiting. So
kind of bracing yourself.
yeah, seriously. Because like I know that if something happens, I can deal with it. I'm mean, if I'd rather it happen to me than, any of my friends who are in worse situations, any of my friends, who aren't white, or trans women. I'm a mean bastard. I can take it, right? I am more worried about what will happen to my friends. So
Yeah, it's kind of similar in that, like I said, asexuality is pretty under the radar, but like, my best friends are, trans, are gay, and it's like, it's as it encroaches, it's scary.
Do you guys have any more questions? Or... Actually, so, speaking of which, I said we would do it at the beginning, but we didn't quite have a chance to. Things are a little difficult across the nation for LGBTQI plus folks. We are currently mourning within the community for the Colorado Springs shooting that happened last night. I asked earlier one of my colleagues to tell me where it was, because there just is so many. It was like just yesterday, the Pulse shooting happened back in 2016, 2017. And so we could just have a quick little moment of silence to reflect and think about those lives lost and those that are still recovering. Thank you. And I think we have one last question.
Question statement. Okay. No. I guess like a little follow-up and kind of that, just like a general thank you to both of you for writing the works that you have written, coming here and talking with us about these works. And I mentioned just like spreading more information, stories, just accesses to parts of oneself that I feel like consistently have not been represented or represented that at least in my past and looking at YA. This is uncharted territory, and thank you both for blazing that.
I just want to second that real quick. And also, those girls dressing up as guy stories, also my childhood lifeblood.
And thank you so much for joining us today and for answering our questions and speaking so much about your process and giving of yourselves right now. So thank you for that as well.
of course, it was so good to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, well. Thank you to everyone at home. Nathan, do you mind holding up those beautiful, beautiful books? For folks at home, you can get copies of Aces Wild, Help Follow With Us, available at the bookstore, bookshop.org. Please don't get it from the DK if you don't like them. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and we hope you have a good evening. Peace and love from Busboys and Poets Books, and a big thank you again to Amanda and Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yay.
Thanks for watching us.
Bye.